All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. I'm here with Matty B today. A little bit different format. Jeff had switched shifts at work, so I don't think he's going to be on for a while. We're trying to get this worked out. I'm actually on vacation. I sent out a tweet. Internet at the hotel has been awful. So I try to keep up with things the best I can. And I had always planned on doing this. I've actually been at 3 different hotels because I've been up and down the coast. I almost actually went to the All-Star game today, but the ticketing for that is outrageous. So I went to Miami, just some background, not sports related, on Friday to see Metallica, and then the plan was to just head to the beach and hang out. We're actually stopped up at Vero Beach, so we're about an hour or two away from Miami, which is where I saw Metallica play, which was a great concert, had a lot of fun. So I went back and I looked, seeing that the All-Star game, I knew it was going to be there. I just wanted to get a feel for it because personally over the years, I haven't kept up with it. It kind of lost its luster for me. I don't know if it's that way for other people, but it used to be something that's big. It's kind of turned into, I have it on right now, so I'm kind of going back and forth with my eyes here. But it's kind of reminding me of like a social media popularity contest. Everything I ever see related to the All-Star game is one of those hashtags like vote for someone because we need our guy to make it. And to me, it's kind of just like they're prostituting themselves out. Hey, see our guy, select them. And I think that draws away from the game. Like, I don't understand. I tried to look into it a little bit to see what the selection was like, and they do take those fan votes into account. And to me, I think it should just be based on merit, like how well you're doing. I actually found an article where it had people who were overvalued and undervalued. I think ESPN put it out, one of their writers or something, but it said that like Cal Ripken Jr., he went to like a handful more All-Star games and started than he should have. And they also had Barry Bonds undervalued, saying that I think he started 11, but based on his like stats, if you're just going strictly by stats, they were saying that for every year that he played, 15 of those years, he should have been the starter at the All-Star game. But he only, because he was hated by the media. So like when you have these popularity contests, you're not getting the best guys. To me, I've seen it. Barry Bonds is the best baseball player I've ever seen in my lifetime. So he should have been there. And I'll quit talking now, Matt. You can go ahead. Do you have any thoughts on the All-Star game?
Well, I think when you look at like the All-Star games, it's not just baseball that it's a problem. I think it's across the board with other sports as well. That you have players that the risk reward of playing in those games isn't really worth it. So you have a lot of like athletes, they opt out. They decide to do other things. Like they decide not to. They'll just turn down the invitation to go. Or like with the NFL, it'll be during that time before the Super Bowl. So you have top players that aren't able to play anyhow. You know, I think it kind of loses some of that luster, and it doesn't help. There's nothing other than your pride that goes into those games. So there's nothing that the players have to really incentivize them to put forth the best effort. It's just kind of like it's sloppy play in most cases. And where I think, 10, 15 years ago, they were competitive and you were seeing, good head-to-head competitions of people playing. Anymore, it's turned into almost a snooze fest because you have a couple people that excel. You have 1 or 2 guys that just go over the top, and then everyone else just kind of lame ducks it during the game. So, I mean, to me, I didn't even realize the All-Star game was on because I don't even there's nothing exciting about those games anymore.
Well, I know it's on because I'm in fantasy baseball, and I always get confused every year because there's 2 weeks that it combines into 1 week because there's a couple games off. So I always have to kind of watch my lineup because we play where you set your lineup for the whole week. And so this week is 2 weeks, so this week. So I had to have it set by I think Wednesday of this week. So I always get confused because I know I'll always have a pitcher go on a DL or die in a boat wreck or something, and then I'll have to have that set up. But the All-Star game, yeah, like you said, the incentive behind it, I don't know. They really can't do too much. I thought, I could be wrong, I don't know if they do this anymore, but they used to have in the contracts, like, if you made an All-Star game, you got a pay bump. But now, like, if they're doing these selections based on this, you really can't do that. Because, like you said, you have guys just skipping. So, does it count for the club if he skips and then someone else gets in and they're like, hell yeah, so glad so-and-so skipped, I just got an extra 100K bonus because I'm backup.
But I almost wonder for those guys that declined to play, they made it. If they're declining because of whatever reason, does that still give them that financial bump anyhow? Because you're saying I was the All-Star, I could have participated, but I'm deciding not to based on my own merit.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. I don't know if that's what happens or if they even still do that just because of the amount of people that skip. And like you said, it's all sports. So if you have a bunch of people skipping, something is inherently wrong with the way you're doing the selection. And I mean, I don't know a way to fix it. I know you said about people just going there dogging, not really trying. Imagine if you're a pitcher and you blow your elbow out in basically a glorified exhibition game in the middle of the year. I mean, I know they tried to make it competitive when they added the winner gets home field advantage in the World Series. I'm pretty sure they did away with that, so I could be wrong, but I absolutely hated that. Because you have most of your big market teams in the AL. In baseball, there's no salary cap. So the Red Sox and the Yankees are going to sign the best players every year. Who gets picked in the All-Star game? The best players. So whenever you have 2 or 3 big market clubs on the same side, it's going to make it unbalanced. I don't know the stats, but I would take a guess and say that the AL probably wins most of the time just for that reason. When you can sign big-time free agents, you're going to win. I think that's why Major League Baseball did away with that. And to me, it just didn't work. I don't know what your thoughts on it, but if you're not familiar with Major League Baseball, they had this exhibition game, the All-Star game, the American League versus the NL. In the World Series, one team from each of those leagues meet. So what Major League Baseball did to help boost the competition was they made it kind of like a winner gets home field advantage in the World Series. So it didn't matter on regular season record or interleague play or anything like that. It went just to this one game where anything could happen. An error leads to like a 3-run inning or a home run or a passed ball or anything. And to me, that was outrageous when they made that call. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, and I think you kind of see with the drafting of the teams, like with the way the NFL was doing it, to try to spark. I think that might be a way to. You're still having your 2 divisions, and one side's gonna, if they wanted to do it that way, they could pull that off and have them say, one side's gonna, we're gonna draft these teams, but then one side's AL, one side's NL, and the winning team is getting, the home field advantage, and you could have that set, designate X number of people are going to be NL, X number AL, and, fantasy draft the rest, or however you wanted to do it. But I think that might be a way that it prevents that heavy-handedness on one side versus the other.
Well, I like your idea, and I think they did away with the home field advantage thing. I was just using that as an example. But yes. I like your idea. Because the NFL did start to do that. So the NFL, they had 2, was it Hall of Famers? How did they pick it?
Yeah, I believe that's who it was.
So they brought
one year was Deion Sanders.
Was it Deion Sanders and Jerry Rice that one year?
I think that's who it was.
So basically, if you're not familiar with how things work, they had 2 Hall of Fame football players, Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders, who actually played on the same team at San Francisco and won a Super Bowl. So they've kind of been like rivals ever since that, because Deion went to the Cowboys and the Cowboys and 49ers played. So they were trying to keep it fun. I honestly think that's why they invited both of them. And then, did they actually play in the game?
I
Like,
don't think.
I
I
don't
think they may
know.
have just been like guest coaches.
Oh, guest coach. I didn't know if like Dion suited up. I remember him having comments saying that he was going to suit up. I don't know if it actually happened because I don't actually watch All Star games. This Major League Baseball one, just because it happened to be on the night that we usually live stream, I'm watching it. So, yeah, I think a Sandlot type game would be better. And I honestly think if you had like, I know we talked about it earlier on, I think it was last week's podcast. I brought up about the jerseys, which I did find a picture. I sent it to the guys after we talked about like the United States jerseys. The camo jerseys that the Pirates wear actually were black and gold. Just the underneath where the gray usually is was camo. So this would be an opportunity if they wanted to have like a generic all-star jersey. I don't know how far away they want to get because like I know Major League Baseball, they're very set in their traditions. So they kind of use this as a way to promote their teams. But with the way social media and TV is, most people know if they're interested in baseball, they know what the teams are. They don't need to use this as an opportunity to promote small market clubs that you don't know what their jerseys look like. So why don't you have like a fun draft? And if you want to do the vote thing, just have the top 2 vote getters be captains if you don't want to go the Hall of Fame route. I did see, I was pumped that they honored the Roberto Clemente before the game. They brought his family out and gave a shout out to him, which is always big because he was big into charity work and things like that. Big at promoting Major League Baseball. And as a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, that's good to see because he's like the guy in Pittsburgh in Hall of Fame. And looking at the markets, I'm not even sure. I think every team gets a guy in, but I don't know how many the Pirates got in overall. But throwing on a Pirates jersey doesn't help Pittsburgh attract free agents or anything like that that's going to help them win games.
Well, I think that puts them in a tough spot. You say about the small markets, and I think to a certain extent, the one thing that's really hurt them has been the whole like Moneyball scenario where you have these small market clubs that use the analytics to dictate player moves and different things. And not saying that it's impossible to do that, but I think with the Pirates, they're one of those teams that try to say, well, we're just a small market team and we're not going to spend the money that the Yankees and Red Sox spend on free agents and players and things like that. You can get away with it, but you better not miss on any of your prospects either, or it sets your club back years and years, like with what you're seeing now.
Yeah, and that strategy, I don't like that argument because I've been digging into the payrolls. I know I've been teasing it, talking about throwing it out and promoting it here on Southbound Sports, but as I'm digging deeper and deeper into the data, like I look at a team like the Atlanta Braves from the 1990s to mid 2000s or so. Yeah, they had some pretty high spikes with payroll, but it was pretty much a roller coaster. Did they have any down years? Not really. They only won one World Series, but you can kind of say that that's a bit of luck. I mean, you can throw together, as long as you're winning your division and making the playoffs, I mean, you have a chance to win it. And you have to have those spikes. If you get the prospects and you're paying eventually one year, you're going to have to pay to keep them. Eventually, you're going to have to do that. And what I see with the Pirates is pretty much a flat line at the bottom. They're saying we're not spending over this, but sometimes you have to kind of pay for that year, make the playoffs, use that playoff money to kind of recycle it into your squad. You can't keep trading guys. I know it's a running joke in Pittsburgh. We joked about it early when McCutchen was doing awful at the beginning of the year. Like, oh, he's traded, and now he's hot. He has the Pirates running. They're rolling. I don't know if they went on a 5-5 streak, and that doesn't make up ground towards 500. But he's been raking the ball, and the end of July is coming. Are they going to trade him? Are they going to they usually trade half their team away? So, I don't know.
But I think they're a critical mass that I think they do enough removing players that to get rid of someone like McCutcheon that's a star on the team, I think would finally alienate the last remaining diehards that are clinging to hope that they're going to put a winner out there. Trading someone like him, even though he had the rough start, would definitely just say we're just purely in this for the financial aspect. We're not in this to win ball games.
Yeah, and
because they're not, whatever they get, it's going to be the prospects that they don't need.
Yeah, or they take a gamble on, like we've joked about before, where they went to, was it India, and signed like 3 or 4 pitchers, even though no Major League Baseball players have ever come out of that country. So, like, you're spending money gambling on prospects, and that's fine at all. I mean, Ichiro Suzuki came out of a similar scenario. There were some other ones. Who was that guy? Not Chan Ho Park. There's a guy before him. I can't remember. That was like they brought over. They're developing in other countries to get someone in.
Hideo Nomo.
Yeah, Hideo Nomo. So you bring in other countries, and I know the Pirates were trying to do that, but still, if you're developing some good talent, eventually you have to keep it. And I know McCutcheon's been there for a while, but like you said, these smaller market teams, like some of them, you're going to have no support after a while. And I don't see, like, in comparison, it's still, Pittsburgh's still like a top 25 market, I think, media market anyway. So it's not like by smaller market, they're not like in the bottom of the 100. I would like to see, maybe I'll throw that up as a graphic. I don't know if I have a pen laying around. I'll make a note of that to look up actual media markets that have major league teams, because I don't think some of them do. Off the top of my head, I might be wrong. I'll just leave that for the graphic. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll throw it out there. But I know people always throw out, oh, they're a small market. Doesn't hurt the Steelers. I mean, eventually winning starts somewhere, and it's usually the front office.
But I think there's also a level of consistency that goes with that too. You know, when you look at like the Steelers organization, one of the things that they've done really well is they keep a lot of their front office people the same. They're not changing, you know, GMs. They're not changing head coaches. They're not constantly being a carousel of people. When you look at, you know, the teams that really struggle, they're the teams that every couple of years, every 3-4 years, are getting a new coach. You know, they're constantly trying to think, well, this is the reason. And the more that you tinker with, I mean, sometimes you just have a bad year. You know, you may have, you know, the perfect storm of hitters and pitchers or whatever sport it is. You may have the perfect team, but sometimes just you catch a bad luck streak and the cards don't fall your way. You don't catch those bounces or whatever late in the game that you need to win. Sometimes it's just a matter of luck, and if you don't have it, what a lot of these teams are doing is they're completely blowing the, you know, like a team that stands out to me in that aspect has been the Washington Redskins. You know, I credit the owner that he's willing to go out and spend money on a free agent, but it's like it almost feels like he's playing a real life. He's like playing Madden. He waits for free agency. He's like, who are the top players that I can sign on my team? And then he signs them, and then they don't do well. So then he just blows up, you know, fires the head coach, fires coordinators, fires everyone. He brings someone else in, and now whoever they bring in may not run the same system, and it puts them further behind.
Well, yeah, I agree. And it's funny because, as you said, Washington, I'm thinking baseball here. I'm watching the All-Star game, and they keep cutting and showing. It looks like the whole right side of the field, second base, first base, right field with Bryce Harper, are all Washington Nationals. And I think they're at that point too. And it might just be the market coincidence that they're both Washington teams. I don't know. But I thought they've like flipped their coach. They went ahead, got Bryce Harper, and they signed a bunch of talent, brought a bunch of guys in, and it hasn't been working. And I think the same thing happened. I could be wrong, but I thought they were flipping coaches, changing batting coaches, like trying to like make that final push. But then you see guys that are successful, like Theo Epstein, who took the Red Sox and won their first World Series, and then won with the Cubs last year. He has a system. He said, all right, let's build up these guys. We're going to bring some guys in. He's not signing big-name guys. If you looked at that Cubs team last year, I don't think any of them were in, I don't know about item or like jersey sales and stuff because Chicago's a big market, but like I didn't recognize like most of their team. So it doesn't take big name guys. It's kind of just putting together a strategy. This is what we want to do. And yeah, you're right. Flipping coaches, changing schemes, because then you're always behind the eight ball. You always need to get, okay, well, some of these guys are left over from when we were trying to just do ball control or do like the money ball base hit thing. Now we have half power, half that, and it just doesn't work out. So, I don't know. It's just frustrating. I need to look. Another graphic I need to look at is like playoff appearances over like the last 20 years just to see, are the Pirates the worst? Like, are other teams flipping through and making it the playoffs every 5 years? I don't know. I can't think of clubs off my head. I would say Houston, but they went through that run with Bagwell and Biggio in like 2000. I think they went to the World Series and lost. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I would say probably Tampa Bay might be one. The Devil Rays may have had they've had some pretty bad losing seasons that might be in the running for that. But I think the Pirates, they've gone through cycles for the longest time now where they win or they come close to fielding a really competitive team, and then they trade off a couple guys, and it affects the chemistry that they have going forward, and it hurts them. You look at the Penguins right now, coming off their second Stanley Cup win. That's one of the things that has really benefited them is you don't see a lot of changes. There are some guys that have left, but the core people stay the same. The coach stays the same. The GM stays the same. A lot of these, it stays the same, and that it builds that level of comfort that you're not going to be pushed out the door at the first sign of trouble.
Yeah, and the Penguins, they did it by sticking with the core group of players. They've pushed out a few coaches. I think the Steelers took the opposite approach. They usually stay behind the coach and push out players if they're having trouble. And they're not afraid to try things either. They tried the slash with Cordell Stewart pretty much a decade or so before that even came into style. They went out with the air raid with Tommy Maddox after his XFL years before finally getting Ben Roethlisberger. But that whole time they stuck with Cowher, giving him year after year. And like you said, they were close to the peak. They made the Super Bowl. They lost in, 95, 94? I think it was 95.
Yes,
and then
95.
They had the trouble with Slash. I remember it. You remember it going up through it. Like, that was like our high school days. Everyone was saying, like, oh, Cowher should be pushed out. And they stuck with them. Changed some personnel. And, I mean, eventually, if you have a good enough system, you're going to get the job done. And because they stuck with them, now they had a foundation built for Tomlin to come in and succeed. So, I mean, both ways work. I think the Penguins, they made their coaching flip and then went on their run and won the last two Stanley Cups. But they had the players there.
Yes.
They weren't trying to bring in other players like last minute, trying to do fancy trades or anything. They're like, we have a group of players. Their strengths are this. We need a coach who has similar strengths, and we think we can win the cup. And that's what happened. So,
well, you saw back around the time that they won the first recent cup back in 2009 maybe. When they won that first one, they went through a period where they were trying to pull in guys. And so they went and got Hossa, and they were trying to but just the style of play wasn't meshing because they were getting these extra talent that they thought was going to put them over the top. But then when you went to apply it to what the lines were going to look like, it seemed like there always ended up being some kind of breakdown, that there wasn't a fluid style of play. You look at 2 years ago, they went out and made that trade for Phil Kessel, and it's paid them huge dividends. Going into this past season, they had a great group of guys. The core was still there. They didn't have to go out and necessarily make a change because the personnel were there. It was just a matter of executing the scheme, and they went ahead and did that.
Yeah, and that's where the Pirates have to find that middle ground. What do they need to do? Is it going to be flipping McCutchen for prospects? eventually you got to stop flipping guys for prospects. You got to get guys that are either developed or, I mean, you're flipping an all-star. You should at least get 2 quality starters for that. I shouldn't even know. Is McCutcheon playing in this game? I'm not sure. I should have looked at the roster. I'm going to sound like an idiot. But,
But that's one of the things that always frustrated me is, and it pushed me away from watching games because it was always said about how bad the farm system was, and maybe it was in really bad shape when the current management took over. Maybe that was the issue, and that they were feeling like rather than spending the money on, they could develop it locally and bring it up through their farm system. Which, if you're going to do that, like back when they were going through Kendall and in the tail end of Jay Bell's career when he went over to Arizona, they started going through that. Tony Womack. There were good guys on the team, but it was like everyone was being let go, and they were saying, "Oh, well, we need the prospects. We need to develop the farm system." Well, at what point do you just become a professional farm system? That guys get good, and then you let them go to the Yankees or Red Sox because you refuse to pay them anything near what an all-star athlete should be getting paid.
Yeah, and that makes another good point, so I'll just bring it up here so I have a note of it. I wonder which guys who have played in this all-star game went through the Curve minor league system. Because I know I've been at the stadium, you've been at the stadium. They have the wall there that lists all the guys, and I think you gave a couple that definitely went through there. So it would be interesting to see, if they, and like I said, they just need to sign them. Once you get to a certain point, I mean, you can't trade for prospects and say, we need to get the farm system going. The guys get to major league level, they get developed enough, and then they're like, oh, we'll trade you for 3 more prospects. At some point, you just have to go ahead and make that play or push, at least, for the playoffs. And watching a game here, Mookie Betts just threw out a dude. Looked like he was going for a double. So that's a pretty good throw, and Mookie definitely is my number 1 fantasy guy. I drafted him the past 2 years, first overall on my team, and this year he's keeping me going. So if you're looking for fantasy advice, and I know it's probably too late because he's definitely not in the free agent pool, but go for Mookie Betts. He got me the championship last year, and I'm making a pretty good push this year, which I'll change topics a little bit. I know fantasy, I haven't really talked about it since we did the live show. I talked about it a little bit before when we were audio only. But Matt and me, we're in a fantasy football league together. I'm in a baseball league with another group of friends. And for just some of the stats and strategy and stuff, I'm probably going to bring it in a little bit more because we have football coming. And last year in fantasy football, was it me and you in the championship, or was it me and Jeff? Because honestly,
it was me and you, ass.
Well, no, I played Jeff, was it the year before? Because I won the last 2 championships. I think I beat Jeff last year, or 2 years ago, and then you last year. So it's interesting because you have basically the top dogs in our league, and our league is not crappy by any means. We do auction. We have dudes that went to Ivy League schools in the league that have won it, but not for a while. And it's pretty competitive. A lot of trash talking. So that's one other aspect we started a little bit last year that I definitely want to bring into Southbound Sports because I think it would help get some more interaction between some of the fans and stuff. So I'll definitely be talking about it. So I'll just start it off a little bit here. Fantasy football is definitely going to be on the docket. But for baseball this year, one of the things that annoys me is our commissioner for my league that I'm in, he bumped the pitching innings, max innings, so he has a minimum inning set. So each week I go hard on closers because they're rare. So I always start a ton of closers, as many as I can get, because the saves are hard to come by. And it's not really based on pitching. If it's a starter, he goes out there, he's going to have a good start every 1.5 games or something. Closers, you don't know, because if the guys aren't hitting, you can have the best closer in the world, but if they're not in the lead, he gets you no saves. So our commissioner bumped up the innings pitched, so I have to go with one less closer than I like this year. So it's throwing me off a bit. And it's frustrating because I think saves have been a more recent stat, if I remember. Because growing up, when did that hit? That was like a big thing. Who was the guy that went for the saves? I know Smoltz went for it once. When he went from a starter to a closer, he became like one of the rare pitchers that had so many wins and so many saves. But was it a guy for, I want to say Trevor Hoffman, but that doesn't sound right. I think there was a guy for like the Padres or something. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is Hoffman.
Yeah, like
that because he went from being a starter to a closer, and he was lights out as a closer.
Yeah, and that's whenever Major League Baseball and the stats guys started to really push the saves as a stat. Like, I remember before, like, everyone thought going complete games was better. And then they started to get into, like, the Tommy John scare, I think, which was about, 20 years ago by now? Holy crap, I'm getting old. But yeah, they had the Tommy John scare, so people then were pushing, they don't have the starting pitcher. There's no way, most guys don't normally pitch 9 innings to get a win. If they get to 7 innings to bring in the setup man and then the closer, it's considered a great outing. So that's another thing you have to look for fantasy. If you're trying to get pitching, is definitely the hardest thing to get, just because it's an all-star game, and most people are looking right now for fantasy baseball. You're halfway through. It's pretty much a marathon. I think it's 24 weeks long, or like 4 months baseball season is. So it's definitely tough. So if you're playing,
forever.
Huh? It's forever.
The baseball season is like forever.
Yeah.
Usually, I don't feel like the games even really matter until after the All-Star break anyhow, because that's usually that to fill that gap between like the college football, NFL regular season. I'll start following some of the baseball stuff to tide me over.
Well, I kind of dipped after I played baseball in college. So once I was done with baseball, there was like a 5 or 6 year gap where I didn't even get into baseball until I got invited into this fantasy league, and which was about 3 or 4 years ago by now. And like you said, yeah, I'm watching it, but until after the All-Star break, it's not really something you look at. And then I look and see the Pirates are 8 games back. And it's like, I probably just can stay tuned out and just keep checking in on it because it's so long and teams can get eliminated so early. But yeah, for fantasy baseball, if you're looking for tips, because it's going to be the hot season, one thing I look for is going to be trades. So last year, one of the things that really put me over the edge with closers was I signed both of the Yankees guys. Was it Andrew Miller? I think it was Andrew Miller, and they had another guy, Chapman. He went out too. So the Yankees had both of them. And so what you need to do is look, because Miller was a setup man. So he was available in our league, because setup men in fantasy baseball are worth shit. They're worth nothing. They don't get you like wins. They don't get you saves. They get you no stats. But the rumor was that Miller was going to get traded. Picked him up. What happened? He got traded to the Indians, the team that went to the World Series for the AL. So that's what you're looking for. That's your tip. Look for guys, closers, because that's my key. If you get a bunch of closers that are going to get you 3-4 saves a week, worst case scenario, they also pick up wins. So if you're stacking up wins, you don't have to worry about your starter missing a start or something going on the DL. Get closers. So right now, look through setup men that can be promoted and start to make moves. Pick them up, stash them on your bench. And then what happens? They don't pan out. Just drop them next week and then pick up some backup hitters, because the next big move you'll have is going to be in, is it August or September, right around playoffs when they do the expanded roster. And so that's what you're looking for. That's my last baseball tidbit for this week's episode. Just a little bit about fantasy baseball and trying to tease a little bit of tips because we're going to be giving them when football season starts. And like I said, it's going to be a little competitive because we play each other. So I can't give out my best tips because I don't have Matt copying off me. And I can't have that.
Oh, please. As far as baseball is concerned, though, one thing that you can do is figure out who your winners are and try to pick people up that are going to be on those teams. So that definitely was something in the past that had helped, as you figure out who are your winners and then just go off of that. The one year that I did play fantasy baseball, I got mad because half the guys were like stinking, so I just went after St. Louis Cardinal players, and then I turned around and like made a nice push in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's also a good strategy because, like I said, I get Mookie Betts. I also look for teams that are going to do well. So this year, like I had a feeling on the Cubs last year, so I went hard on Red Sox at Cubs. You can never really go wrong with Yankees or Red Sox because worst case scenario, like in the Andrew Miller deal, he gets traded to another contender because the Yankees don't trade scrubs to try to build up their own bench. But other teams, Matt gave one, Cardinals down the stretch. They always have good pitchers. And this is mainly for pitchers. Right now the Dodgers are hot, but everyone in the NL West is hot. So I would stay away. And my reasoning is at the end of the year, which is when playoffs start, it's all inter-division play. So if all those teams are actually really good, which it looks like they might be, they're going to cannibalize each other. So stay away from the NL West. Look for crappy divisions like the NL East, where the Nationals are way above everyone else. And pick up national guys, because look who they get to beat up on. The Braves, under 500. Mets, way under 500. Phillies, way under 500. And the Marlins, under 500 during that last stretch. So take a look at divisions. They all play each other when? During the playoffs. That's what matters. So right now, try to put yourself in a position to pick up some good guys. Look for the expanded rosters. Who was the guy the Yankees brought up last year? There's always one guy in our league that he knows every minor league guy. Signs them, gets up to the Yankees, hits like 4 home runs. He was a catcher last year. I forget his name. But don't let that guy ruin your league by beating you to the top guys. Go ahead, stash as many guys as you can. That's my strategy for baseball. Like Matt said, look for winning teams. Football is a little bit different, but we'll get into some fantasy football later in the year because we'll do our draft prep. I'll give out some of my tips because I don't care. I'm still going to win this year.
No.
If I go three-peat, I'm just going to name the trophy after myself like Vince Lombardi did.
No, I can pretty much guarantee that won't happen.
It was lucky last year.
It was luck last year. Just like statistically, I ended 2 games in a tie. That should have been some kind of prize-winning thing from the fantasy football world.
Yeah, true. Ties are very rare.
Completely ending in a tie with that many players twice.
Wasn't that the Redskins game where your opponent had?
Yes, that was.
Who was it?
Garcon, and they kept throwing the ball and he kept dropping it.
Yeah, they threw. Because we played.
Was down.
Yeah, we played point per reception, so it was a tie, and I'm watching it. It's in the. I think it was the playoffs. Matt's guys are done. So whoever he's playing has Garcon left, and the Redskins are throwing it to him. One sails over his head. The next one he drops. Then I think the third one was short, and it ended in a tie, which Matt won the head-to-head or something, so he got the push in the playoffs. But that was like the one time where I actually felt like the stress of a fantasy game because it's playoffs and you're like, I don't know which team I'd rather play. Is it going to be Matt? It looks like it's not going to be Matt because his guys are done, and then they're definitely throwing to him, but it just didn't work out.
Well, the funny thing with that was right before my team canceled out, there was, I forget, it was one of my receivers or somebody had either threw an interception or fumbled or did something that I had points, ended up getting taken off that brought us into the tie, which is what had me fired up to begin with. Is that I was ahead and was like, oh, I'm good. I wasn't worried. And then I pulled up the stat line and it showed that we were tied again. I was like, how the heck did that happen?
I think you're right. I think it was a fumble.
Thinking,
And I think it was
Because it
the
was like
same game.
the games were pretty much over.
Yeah, I think it was that same game. It was like the Redskins game. Whoever, I forget now. I have to look it up because my memory is probably bad. But I think whoever you had fumbled and gave the ball to the Redskins. So it was like ironically it set it up like basically your team was handing him in fantasy terms the game, even though in real life it's nothing like that at all. But because I remember I actually turned that game on. I was like, I have to watch this game to see if this guy catches one ball. So that I know who I'm playing. And even though my strategy is going to be the same, because in fantasy you can't go on who you're playing, that doesn't make sense. But I don't know.
I think it does help. I think there is with our league, there is a little bit of strategy involved with the draft, because from year to year, you go in with like an idea of like certain guys that you want to take, and then with us using the auction style, it's like there's certain players that you think there's no way they're gonna go above like $50, and they get like just the bids just go flying in. They're up to like $85 for like Odell Beckham Jr. And then you're like, well, there's no way I'm gonna spend my entire allotment on one player. So it changes.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I'm going to be bringing that in because I know that's going to be a big thing that we'll probably cover as fantasy football. Again, like I said, because the guys on the show, we're all in a league together. So I'm actually going to look and try to find my draft from last year and bring it into the show as we get closer to the season. Because I remember I got Matt Ryan for $2, which was like the big thing. And the only reason I got him was I wanted Cam Newton. But everyone kept bidding him up because I have a sheet that shows me, okay, this is how much each guy's worth. And the past 2 years, as I've been winning, I've been really strict on not going over that offer sheet. So I kind of put together my own offer sheet based on a couple different sites. I'll find some examples and I'll tweet them out. But I make my own offer sheet and I sit there and I bid. Once he gets to a point, I just cross them off. Eventually, you have to start bidding on someone. But that's basically my strategy. And I thought for sure I got stuck with Matt Ryan, but I knew Matt Ryan for $2 was going to be a decent bid. So you kind of have to get lucky on the auction draft. But really, it's really the only way to play fantasy sports is auction. Because the snake draft, I did one just as a practice after that, and it's not as fun. Because with the auction, you can kind of, if you really want a guy, you can get him. You might have to bid $85, like Matt said, which is almost half your team's budget, but it's a lot more strategy based than just picking whoever the computer gives you. Because that's how our baseball league is. But baseball is a little bit different because there's so many guys. And most of my moves I make during free agency because the draft is a crapshoot. You get a guy like Sterling Marte, and then what? He's out for half the season. So I think Chapman, he got busted for PEDs on my team. I always draft him too because he's a good closer. But he was out. Was it this year? I think it was this year. Or was it last year? I don't know. And then I had, who's the guy I always talk about? He died in that boat wreck last year. So Jose Fernandez. Yeah, he died in a boat wreck in the middle of playoffs. So it's like, oh, I lost. My ace died. And which I thought was a cruel joke, too, whenever I see it trending on Twitter. You know, they do the fake deaths. They're like, hey, there's a guy, it kind of looks like Jose Fernandez. I'm like, nah, that can't be real. And then it is. So there's some things in fantasy you can't control. But I know you had, before we go, last thing, I know you were talking about the Floyd Mayweather fight before we got on here, about how he's in tax trouble. You want to give us a rundown on that?
From what I was reading, it seems like in an interview he had talked about how he needs to wait for the money that he's going to get from this current fight so that he can pay off like his 2015 taxes. If that's true, I would fire whoever his money manager is because they're doing a terrible job. If you're like 2 years behind, or 2 years behind in your taxes, and you still like are crying poor, winning the kind of money that he's winning in these fights.
Yeah, and some of the bets he throws up are crazy, like $1 million bets. He always Instagrams or tweets out his tag from Vegas whenever he throws a bet down. But like, yeah, if you're 2 years behind taxes and you make that much money, that's not a good sign. I mean, yeah, you definitely need a good accountant. I know a lot of his guys are probably handpicked from him, friends or whatever. And I understand a lot of it's probably due because a lot of those guys are on his payroll. So he has to do bodyguards, hype men, whoever his manager, all probably comes out of his paychecks. But yeah, you should definitely have an accountant that is good enough to at least put, I mean, you could put half of your paycheck away, more than half your paycheck, and still be fine. And then anytime something happens tax-wise, just pay it off. No big deal. Everyone's going to have to do it. But waiting for fights is not a good way to live, because that's how you're going to get your unblemished record knocked down.
Maybe he's hoping to go to jail out of this and he can be a prison brawler and take the prison title too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I saw when they said we talked about McGregor last week, I've seen some videos of him floating around where he does not look good against some boxing scrubs. But I heard out of some people saying that those were like fake vids to try to get Mayweather to like see a fake style. So I don't know how much showmanship is going into this fight. But if that's true, that's pretty elaborate to have fake boxing videos of yourself spreading around social media to try to get your opponent off guard. But
that's what it takes to win, I guess, in today's boxing.
Yeah, I guess. But we'll close on that. Do you have any closing thoughts before we go?
Just getting excited. A couple more Saturdays and we'll be back to college football. Got that Alabama-Florida State opener. I'm really excited about seeing two top teams playing and hopefully starting the year off on a good note.
Yeah, I'm down in Florida. Michigan kicks off against Florida in Texas, I think. Is it AT&T Cowboy Stadium for their opening game?
Yep.
I've seen a lot of Gators gear. It's getting my blood boiling down here. Saw some chick today in a full-on outfit. She had a Gators visor, the blue Florida shirt, and then bright orange like yoga pants. So she had the full gear on, Florida Gators. I know you don't like the Gators either. So just picture that.
Did you see the McElwain like shark humping shirts or anything around?
No, I didn't see that.
Just be careful out there. McElwain's out there humping sharks, so
doesn't surprise me. Maybe that's how he gets in recruits.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, because I'm sure. Yeah, because they're supposed to be more talented this year, whatever that means. Even though Florida probably picks their 5-star guys whenever they want, so I'm sure they'll have some excuse for they don't have another good year. Because last time we played Florida with Harbaugh, it was like a 41-10 beatdown. So I hope more of the same starts off the year this year. He's had, 12 months to prepare pretty much? 10 months, 9 months, whatever it is. So I'm confident going into that game. But all right, check us out. I'm going to be trying out some different streaming things. We've been streaming to YouTube, but most of our interactions with fans come on Twitter. We've had a little bit on Instagram, so I'm going to kind of toy around with those and maybe switch platforms for our stream. The videos will continue to go up on YouTube on Wednesday, and our podcast will be up on iTunes. I've been working with Stitcher and TuneIn and Google Play to get our stuff updated on there. So I'll be putting those links out. I might pin it to the top of our Twitter. So if you're looking for how to subscribe, please subscribe. I messed up before. I've been sending out just links to the downloads, which have been getting good downloads, but we need people to subscribe because that helps our numbers all around instead of just the numbers for one episode. So check those out. Southbound Sports on everything except for Twitter. We're S-Bound Sports because of their character limit. So follow us, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.